It was about 3 decades before the beginning of the current era that the invention of the quantum vortex drive allowed the construction of vessels that would spend the last 15 years of the old era exploring much of our side of the galaxy. One of the sad and disturbing aspects of that, the excitement being drowned out by finding so much of the galaxy being lifeless when science fiction and hope had led us to believe otherwise. There were aliens, though, however. Of course, we encountered first the pucks by radio transmission, sending our first messengers there by vortex drive, through them being introduced to the Caltex, who of course already knew that Earth existed. It remains controversial how long ago they first visited, as their word for us, Terran, and our planet Terfinzian, seems to have influenced our actual culture. The pucks from planet Puxiswitney are subterranean creatures by necessity. Long ago, they learned to explore the surface of their world through small apparati that developed into periscope-like devices that over time became the almost puppet formation we see today, where much of their social interaction, their entertainment, you name it, takes place on the surface through the avatars of their puppets. But the pucks, being an almost impossibly thin, cartilage-composed entity, they move through all forms of soil with the little nubs on their bodies almost as quickly as we can move through air. Their culture is remarkably alien, but they have learned to mimic ours because of their desire to live through puppets on the surface. We first heard from the pucks by transmission and were puzzled at the odd physiology they appeared to display based on their movements and communication. They had adopted enough of our language through intercepting our signals to be able to communicate. But when our first vortex drive ship, the Starship Liberty, arrived to meet them, there was the disastrous cultural miscommunication where our astronaut, one of them, was killed because he was mistaken by the pucks for a puppet who tried to modify his mechanism from beneath. Resolving that disaster and getting the mourning period past, the pucks introduced us then to the Caltex, and we began to learn more about the history of our side of the galaxy and the unfortunate reality, really, that there were only the 3 primary species, ourselves, the pucks, and the Caltech. On the surface, the Caltex from planet Caltechia are much more easily recognizable by Terrans as a physiology, being that they are reptilian in nature, though humanoid quasi. They have 2 heads, 4 arms, 3 legs, 1 tail. They seem to have 1 brain, as best as can be determined. As we have a left and right brain pole, they have different poles of their brain stored in different craniums, meaning that in theory, without one head or the other, they could continue to survive, but without the benefits of the other brain pole, meaning in a brain damaged and limited fashion. Much more than the pucks, who were limited by their subterranean nature, the Caltex explored much of our half of the galaxy before we encountered them in person. They were well aware of us and our history. Not too long after becoming on friendly terms with the Caltex and the pucks came the Great Flood, or the Deluge, the disastrous, multiple, highly destructive energy waves emanating out from the galactic core that destroyed many planets in our half of the galaxy. In fact, the Caltex and the pucks were forced to evacuate what they could. Most of their species were lost in the destruction, but they were able to relocate what was left to the solar system. The pucks have been given the planet Mars. We now call it Puxiswitney, which they prefer over New Puxiswitney. It's something cultural with them. The Caltex are in various tropical zones around the planet Earth. This blending together, the convergence of the alien species we knew with us in our solar system on this side of the galaxy, is what led to the new nation state being referred to as the Solar Convergence. Not long after the Great Deluge, we discovered out in space it had left small wormhole-like structures which allowed for rapid transit to far points on the other side of the galaxy, or perhaps further. We attempted, for reasons that are practical, to generate such an anomaly right in the solar system. We succeeded, but the one we succeeded in creating is not very large, only several feet. Therefore, we constructed a station on our side of the aperture that then extends in through to the other side, where there's another half of the station at another point on the other side of the galaxy. Therefore, passage to the far side of the galaxy happens by crawling through the tunnel and going into the second half of this station. Having named the station Bryn Gustafsson in honor of the captain who first made contact with the pucks, the part of the station on our half of the galaxy is called Bryn, and on the other half, Gustafsson Station. It has been quite a construction project to get the necessary people and materials through the small aperture and to seek out the necessary resources to continue construction and exploration on that side of the anomaly. Which brings us up to what would be our present in the Solar Convergence. 127 years SC, we have begun exploring the far side of the galaxy with gusto. The discoveries that we've made have been everything on that side of the galaxy is as science fiction would have imagined it, and that we did not find on our side multiple species being reported in unique and interesting situations week after week. We will begin including those briefings in this list online. This is Pictures from the Milky Way.